Well, hello. Welcome back to that thing we call Curless Mania. Man, where we talk all things rock, pop, and prog. Let's try that again. Rock, pop, prog. And we've been doing some hard rock recently, and now we're back to more of a prog area again to talk about one of my and one of his absolute favorite bands, Pink Floyd.
Absolutely.
Come on
What's
now.
up, Joe?
I mean, look at this. Look at the background there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
Definitely.
yeah, so before I even do anything more, I gotta welcome back to the channel, Mr. Cody Brockway. Of
Woo!
yes, Cody, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Don't forget to go if you haven't. I'm just going to jump in here for a quick second. If y'all haven't checked it out before, go check out my channel, Brockway's Vinyl Bites. We're not exactly as cool as Curless Mania, but we're pretty we're up there. For Curless Mania is where it's at.
Dude, you are that is a very cool channel. In fact, I just watched your 1972, I think best of 72 or something. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That was a great episode.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Maybe the viewers will too. Brockway's Vinyl Bites here on YouTube. But like I was saying, I think Curless Mania, Tom, you run a really cool channel here. I love the album battles. It's something that is just it's so unique and it's so cool, and I really appreciate that you do it. And I appreciate that you've had me on now for the second time. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. I
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
love watching what you do. It's great.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you. I mean, by the way, I also like to say that Cody's a Renaissance man. Man, he doesn't not only does he do like a YouTube channel, he's got a record store. He has a radio show. He's a drummer. I mean, this guy does everything. So just and he's also a Pink Floyd expert. So let's just throw that out there too.
I'm a Pink
Uh,
Floyd freak. That's right.
that's right. So
I
today
really
we are
realized that
here.
last night.
What's that?
I said I really realized that last night.
Juggling
Oh,
a lot of different things, man.
oh yeah.
So we are here today to talk about Waterless Floyd, Momentary Lapse of Reason from 1987 versus the Division Bell from 1994. These are two albums led by David Gilmour. It's kind of a controversial topic because it's like a lot of people, these albums get mixed reviews from a lot of people because they're like, without Roger, it's not the same. Without Roger's lyrical bite, that you lose a lot of the edge that Pink Floyd had in their heyday. That is a arguable point, right? I mean, Gilmour is definitely at the helm on these records. There's no question. But we'll get further into that. Um, and I think the music is becoming more important on these records than the lyrics. It's again arguable, but that the music is becoming more of a focal point on these albums. Without Roger's direction, there's not as much concept going on either. They're trying for concepts, but in my opinion, they're not quite as strong as previous concepts. So without Roger being there, so before we get into anything specific on these records, I'm going to try to do this is going to be trying is the key word to do a quick backstory leading up to Momentary Lapse of Reason. So Cody and I were just talking about it before we hit record, and that is that when there's two people divorce, it's not like one thing that ends up having the like, oh, it's just that one thing, man. You left your toothbrush where I didn't want it to be, and I'm divorcing you. It's like 30 different things that happen were over years that, like all of a sudden, finally, they just go, okay, that's it. I can't do it anymore. That's it. Right. So, so in Pink Floyd's
Absolutely right.
case, what's
Absolutely.
that?
I said absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and Cody, feel free to jump in when, I'm going to be like babbling for a bit here, but feel free to jump in. So, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start. I was trying to debating where to start. I'm gonna start right at the beginning of the making of this record, Wish You Were Here.
Oh
Okay.
yes.
So I'm going way back. Dark Side of the Moon is a massive hit. Pink Floyd becomes this huge band. from that record. They have a hugely successful tour. The album sells millions of records. I don't know how many, who knows? It's like they're setting records at this point, but even in 73, it was selling bucket loads.
Yeah.
They were now a tier A band. They were now selling out places easily, like putting on tickets on sale, boom, sold out. And this is after years of touring. They built up this following, this cult following. Then they became way more mainstream. They actually put out a single, which was against their thing. They usually did. Money was a single. It became a hit. So they're gathering to make the follow up to this massive hit that they finally have. So now they are successful. They're rich. They're famous. I mean, it's just like they achieved all of their goals at this point, right? So they're sitting in the studio, kind of looking at each other when they get back to Abbey Road to make "Wish You Were Here," and it's a slow process. I mean, there's just not a lot of motivation going on, and people are playing racquetball, squash. They're off sailing. Who knows, the Greek islands? I don't know. They're off drinking at their country. I don't know what they're doing, but they're just sort of scattered. And then when they do get together, they're sort of like, I don't know what we can do. I don't know. I don't know, looking at each other like. So Roger ends up. Long story short, Roger ends up saying, "Okay, I guess I got to take the reins here because nobody else is." So he starts kind of directing things more and more and more. I mean, you don't hear it as much on "Wish You Were Here." Gilmour is obviously other guys are all over that record, and it's an amazing album. But this is where Roger starts taking the reins. So "Wish You Were Here" comes out as another smash, another huge album, another huge tour, right? Now
Yeah.
they're like just, I mean, it's just all gravy at this point. They are a humongous band. Then they come back to make the next record, which is to become Animals, and they use all these old scraps from these albums Animals. Let's grab that. Um,
I love this
which
record
man, is
so
this an awesome album or what?
much.
Uh, Holy crap, this is great. And
Masterpiece.
it's really, it was made up from three different things called like "Gotta Be Crazy." There were a couple. There were a couple different names for these songs before they became "Dogs and Sheep and Pigs." Um, One was "Gotta Be Crazy." One was what's the other one called? Um,
I can't remember either.
oh God. Anyway, it'll come to me later. But they were playing these on the 74 tour for "Wish You Were Here." These like songs that, and you can hear it on the reissue of "Wish You Were Here." You hear those songs.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So essentially what happens on this record is Roger takes even more control and says, well, we're not going to do "Raving and Drooling" was the name of the other one. "Raving and Drooling." Got it.
Oh, yes, 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 it
Yes.
was. I
So
remember now.
Gilmour's idea was, let's just do the "Raving and Drooling" and "Gotta Be Crazy." Let's just do those. And Roger's like, no, 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 no. We need a concept. He comes up with a brilliant concept of the George Orwell kind of theme with the animals. Anyway, he takes over more on this record, even further grabbing the reins, right? And Gilmour doesn't have maybe as much input, but his soloing on this is just, I think his frustration came out in his solos, and it's like, oh my God, unbelievable. So then we get to "The Wall," right? So the next album is "The Wall." And by this point, after the Animals tour, they're even, they're just rocking and rolling at this. They are just so rich, so famous. And Roger's ego is getting worse and worse, in my opinion, is getting high, worse and worse as far as like, I am Pink Floyd. So in the meantime, these guys were kind of frustrated with the guys in the band were sort of frustrated with the way this went. So they end up doing solo records in 1978. Gilmour and Wright both do solo records. Gilmour's the self-titled, and Wright is called "Wet Dream," and they do it in 1978. They both put out solo records. Roger does not. However, he spends a lot of time doing demos for what becomes this,
Oh yeah.
right? As well
Oh,
as pros and cons of hitchhiking. And you will see that I wrote what, "The Wall" on there, but this is like when I was in like ninth grade or something. I don't know
oh,
why
you
I
still have
did
the
that.
original one. That's
This is
great.
the original, yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. Does it still play good?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's not bad.
Awesome.
So anyway, and "The Wall" is another amazing record, but let's just say that Gilmour and Waters are butting heads even more on this album. It's just becoming worse with every record. And they've got Bob Ezrin producing, so he's in the middle of both of them, right? And Roger really wants to take control of this because this is like his story. So he's like, even though they call it Pink, it's basically Roger, and it's like
Yeah.
his life story in a lot of these songs. And but Gilmour in particular pushes back on a lot of stuff, and also Gilmour's hands are all over this album. I mean, he's still very much in the mix.
Yeah.
However, Rick Wright is getting pushed out further and further, and so is Nick Mason is getting pushed further out. Like, oh, I can't play Mother, I can't do that. So they get a session drummer. So this album, another massive hit. So they just hit after hit after hit after hit. And then it comes to making the next album, which we all know is the Final Cut. And Roger takes total control of this and basically says, I can do this album on my own. I'm going to pull it. I don't even know if I'm going to call it Pink Floyd. It might just be a solo record. I don't know. Then he finally calls it Pink Floyd. But by this point, Gilmour's super frustrated with him, and they're really fighting a lot at this point. And finally, Gilmour, about halfway through the record, says, "You know what? Forget it. If you need a guitar player, just call me." He gets so frustrated. In fact, in this book, it says, what does he say? He says, "Sometimes I drove home from the recording studio and screamed and swore even though I was alone in the car." This is during the
Yeah.
making of the Final Cut. That was Roger's fault. He didn't want my music. He didn't want my ideas. It got to the point where I just had to say, if you want a guitar player, give me a call and I'll play some. So and so by this point, Wright is basically gone. Nick's barely playing on it. And Gilmour and Waters are like this. So, okay. So next, real quick, almost done. So then Final Cut comes out, does pretty well. And then Gilmour comes out with About Face, and people are kind of wondering what's happening with Pink Floyd because it's kind of quiet. And then David Gilmour comes out with About Face, his first and second solo record, and Roger
Great
comes
album,
out.
by the way.
What's
I
that?
love that. I love
I
that
do.
record.
I like that album as well. It's very strong, in my opinion. There's a lot of strong stuff on that. And then Roger comes out with Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. And I'll say all these albums are coming out, but there's no Pink Floyd product. And of course, the record company's like, dude, what's going on? What's happening? What is Pink Floyd still alive? Where's the next Pink Floyd album?
Yeah.
Uh, right. So, and the manager too, Steve O'Rourke, is like, dude, are we getting to get what's happening? And then Roger ends up basically saying, Pink Floyd's over. I'm done. I want out. And he thinks that when leaves, that it's just going to die. And it doesn't. It doesn't just die. In fact, Gilmour gets even more up, like almost motivated by the fact that Roger was like, it's a spent force. He kept saying, it's a spent force. It's over. If I'm not in the band, nothing's happening. Those guys will never do it. In fact, he said to Gilmour, you'll never do it. And I think that's what spurred him on. Like, oh, what, really? Watch this. I'll never do it. Okay. And that's what Nick Mason says in his book. He said, if anything, it kind of spurred Gilmour on to do it, because it was basically, think about someone who says, you'll never do that. You're like, oh, watch me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you
Absolutely.
know, so there's tons of litigation going on back and forth, blah, blah, blah. And there's just tons of litigation happening, but because then Roger, he hits the roof when he hears we're actually going to go ahead with the Pink Floyd album. So that's enough of that. So let's get into it. So that is a lead up to the making of this album, Momentary Lapse of Reason. So I'm going to hand it over to Cody now at this point after that long history.
Oh, that's good. That the people needed to know that, and that was a good lead up. So that's awesome. That
Yeah.
was um, yeah. So there was a court case, right? Like, and so like like you were saying, with the back and forth between Gilmour and Waters and stuff, and Gilmour eventually wins the rights to the Pink Floyd name, and he was going to release that record as a solo album. You can tell this was done on his houseboat because it sounds like Signs of Life. It sounds like he just opened up the door and stuck a microphone out.
Yes. Yeah.
And so this was definitely intended to be a David Gilmour solo album. So that's why there's probably not a lot of songs directly about the situation with Waters at the time.
Right.
that's on this album.
Hmm.
He was probably supposed to keep quiet about it and just wasn't supposed to, be vocal about it yet until the case would have been eventually completed, right? Because a lot
Right.
of these songs were done and in the can before, before it got the Pink Floyd title and Richard Wright got a picture inside the record and that sort of thing. There's a lot of great music on this though, and if you like David Gilmour solo albums, you're bound to love this
Hmm.
because it is like the Pink Floyd version of a solo album. It really is,
Yeah.
except for Tony Levin plays bass on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
I didn't know how much he contributed to the bass performances on this record, and I'm listening to it last night, and every song has these slapping bass lines, just these killer bass lines. I'm like, who's on this? And I'm like, I'm talking to the Alexa machine. Like, please don't turn on. Okay, but I'm talking to Alexa, and I'm like, hey, who plays bass on this Pink Floyd track? And Tony Levin plays bass pretty much on every track on this album,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it is so good. Let's go
Oh
through
man,
a
one
little.
slip. I love one slip when he does that breakdown and he's playing. Oh, that bass is so killer.
Yeah, and he switches from like a four string to a Chapman stick,
Hmm.
and he alternates between. It's crazy. He's just
Amazing.
insane. And so this was Gilmour basically saying, although it was intended as a solo album, it was kind of like, okay, most of the Pink Floyd members aren't on it, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. But
Yep.
it did get the Pink Floyd name because he won the rights to the name, and he still has them to this day.
Yep.
And so Signs of Life. I love the splashing water at the beginning of that. I gotta say, it's like he opened up the door, right? Stuck a microphone out, and you hear the waves of the water. I'm like, yeah, this is that rich David Gilmour sitting in his houseboat recording, right?
Exactly. His
But
fancy houseboat and there's a studio in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. But it's very moody. It's kind of like a piece for a movie
Hmm.
in a sense. Like it could be like the opening credits to a film. It's like a really dramatic movie.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what these albums both have in common is they're very cinematic, they're very atmospheric, they're very conceptual, but not in a lyrical way, sort of. They're conceptual as in the music seems to tie them together really well.
Hmm.
And so you go into Learning to Fly, and I love this record. That's actually a hit single for them, Learning to Fly. Not like Money or anything like that, but it is a song that you still hear on the radio from time to time. Um, just a great track. What else we got? Dogs of War. Dogs of War is seemingly it's a track that some fans kind of take issue with because of the topic about war and how Pink Floyd, usually the war tracks were about, Roger Waters talking about his dad and all that stuff. But all of a sudden here's Pink Floyd without Waters doing a war song or a song about war and fighting and dogs of war, right? So dogs reference to that sort of so to say, right? But I don't it doesn't bother me none, man. I think that's a great song. It's heavy, it's edgy, it's got a really great drum track from Carmine Appice. Um and I love that edginess that Dave has in his voice when he's singing Dogs of War. It's great. It's so good.
Sort of
Um
like heavy blues in a way, almost.
Heavy blues,
You
the
know?
heavy blues, that's right. And but most of the Pink Floyd guys aren't on this. I don't know if there's Richard Wright or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's mostly got like Carmine Appice. It's got Scott Page doing the sax solo on it, and David Gilmour, right? But it's so good that it stands alone for what it is. It's really good. One Slip. Love the drumming in that. Really cool tribal sort of drumming, and Tony Levin playing bass on that. Like we were just talking about the alternating between the Chapman stick and the regular bass. It's great.
So
It's
cool.
it's different. It's different for what you'd probably expect from a Pink Floyd record at that time, but it was the '80s, and
Right. Right. Yep.
it's not far off from About Face either. But it's like
Yes.
the Floyd version of that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Dave knew what he was doing because every track has an atmosphere that seems to flow perfectly into the next one.
Hmm.
And that brings us to On the Turning Away. Possibly my favorite song on the album, maybe, perhaps. It is just magnificent. What do I have written here? Beautiful vocals from David Gilmour, and possibly one of his best guitar solos ever laid to tape. Again, another fantastic bass performance from Tony Levin, and fretless this time.
Yes.
I love the rhythmic changes, how it starts off in halftime, like from the pain and downtrodden. And
Yeah.
as it goes forward into the guitar solo picks up, and it's all of a sudden it goes into full time. It's really moody. It's That's one of the things about Pink Floyd in general, is that the music is so moody, and it really takes you on an adventure sonically when you listen to it. Gilmour can say 1,000 words in 5 notes. He
Yes.
he
Yes.
doesn't have to shred it. He can bend one note, and you know exactly what he's going for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yet another
It's like
movie.
his touch, it's that touch,
Yes,
you know?
yes, it's his feeling. He can't play without his soul coming into the question here, because
Yeah,
as soon as he picks up a guitar, you hear his heart, and that's what it's about, man. That's what it's about.
absolutely.
Um, Yet another movie. Just a great instrumental track. It's a movie for the ears, absolutely. So yet another movie totally makes sense. With the way the keyboards rush through your head, especially in the surround mix, I was listening to the keyboards just seem to rush from speaker to speaker. It's just brilliant. And Richard Wright is actually a big contributor to this track. He's all over the keyboards on this, and Tony Levin's on it as well. Tony's on most of the album, but his performance is so outstanding that I have to mention it with every track because it is so good.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and you know what, Richard Wright, just saying that he contributes the way he does to this track, it is really well done. His touch is really noticeable. It is totally Rick Wright, and it is totally just there, and it really adds to the feeling and vibe of the track. Um,
it really
Railroad
feels very
Ground,
Floydish, that song,
yeah,
probably because he's there. Yeah,
he has that touch.
yep.
He does, and you can't have Pink Floyd. The only Pink Floyd album that doesn't have him is the Final Cut, and I'm not a big fan of that record. So it's you have to have Richard Wright, or else it's
Richard
not.
Wright is an essential component. Yes.
Yes, even if he's on only a couple tracks,
Mhm.
like you barely hear him on The Wall,
Right,
and you barely hear
right.
him on this, but when you hear him, you hear him.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, Terminal Frost, yeah, there's around and around and stuff too, which is mostly like a gap track between what was before it and what's to come after it.
Hmm.
Yet another movie, part one and two, pretty cool. Terminal Frost, another great instrumental. Um, Love the saxophones in that. You actually have John Helliwell and Tom Scott. Now, Tom Scott is a big time saxophonist. For the rock fans out there, if you don't know who Tom Scott is, listen to Paul McCartney's Listen to What the Man Said. That's Tom Scott on there. That was a one take, that solo in that Paul
Wow,
McCartney song.
wow.
He was warming up and Paul hit record. And at the end of it, Tom Scott says, "I'm ready to go." And Paul says, "Actually, here's your check. Have a great day." Uh,
Yeah, it's great.
yeah, Tom Scott, household name in the saxophone community, and he's really shining on Terminal Frost. Just great, just great, um, just great, beautiful, beautiful. And so that's the instrumental track. That's the sort of 6 minute track of
Yeah,
just instrumental. Yeah,
yeah.
great stuff. And Sorrow,
Oof.
so all of the tracks, even the tracks with vocals on this, have soaring instrumentals in behind them.
Right,
So
right.
like Sorrow is killer. Yet another movie, even though it's got lyrics, but it's like it's just the mood behind it is so cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that first note on Sorrow, that like those like it's like, oh my God, it's so
Yeah,
killer.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's heavy. It's well, what better way to end the album?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
It's heavy, it's in your face, it attacks you. It's like a sports car coming at you. You better move out of the way, you know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You're standing in the middle of the street and you hear that engine revving, and it's like, oh, I better get off the road. It's a
Exactly.
menacing
Great,
guitar
great
tone
analogy.
from David.
Yeah.
It, it's a totally menacing track, and it's showcased alongside an unforgettable riff and groove when the band comes in, because the guitar takes a while to lead us in, but a while doesn't mean anything in Pink Floyd lingo, right? A while is
Right? Good, exactly. Pink Floyd
like
always takes a while.
and that's what it's about. Is it's
Yeah.
about building to get to that climax, and then the groove comes in, boom, 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 boom,
Oh
boom.
no, don't.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
It's so good. And Dave's guitar takes center stage as the piece grows on. About after the verses, and I don't think there's not even any choruses in that. It's just little refrains in between long verses.
That's true. You're
Um,
right. Exactly. Yeah.
the last 4 or 5 minutes is just, or at least 3 to 4 minutes at least of that track is just heavy soloing from Gilmour.
Yeah.
And his solos are never out of place. It's always like the right place at the right time, just perfect. And I love everything about this track, especially the live versions. Um,
Yes. Yes.
I think they
Yep.
do it on Pulse. I think they do it on the one that's on your shirt.
Yep.
They definitely do it on Delicate Sound of Thunder. And it's
Right. Oh no, it's oh, believe me, I saw that. I saw them live on the Momentary Lapse tour at in New Jersey.
come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that show. I mean, I was a stadium show and I was pretty far back, but however, it didn't matter. It was still Sorrow kicked ass live. Oh my God, it was so good.
So you saw this tour.
Yes. Yes, I did.
What a lucky man you are.
Giant Stadium, New Jersey. Yep.
Wow, maybe was this recorded there?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe. I God, if it is, that would be awesome. Um,
Probably parts of it. They do that a lot at the time.
yeah, and then yeah, so that was killer. That was a great show. I was in high school. I was a senior in high school.
Wow, awesome.
So yeah.
Did you know that that live album from the tour you saw was the first album to ever be played in outer space?
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know
Yes.
that. No, I did not know that.
An astronaut, I forget the guy's name, but he brought it up in space with him, and it was the first album to ever be played in outer space, was that live album.
Awesome. Awesome. So yeah, so I'm just gonna say a couple things about this record, real fast. You did a
Yours,
great
man.
job. I'm just gonna say a few things just to extrapolate on a couple things that you said. One that I wanted to say was that you said something about it sounding 80s. You know, it is an 80s record. It's okay. It was released in 1987. It's got those big booming drums, and that's all right. You know, to me, it's okay. Like they remixed that. You have the remix I saw.
I
Um,
have both. I have the original and the remix.
Yeah, because they remixed it because people were like, "Oh, it sounds too 80s," you know, it's too 80s, and it's like I listened to the remix and it's okay, but I don't know. For me, I guess this is sentimental because I loved this album when it came out, and I remember running to the store and buying it at the time, and just listened to the hell out of it just when it came out. So it just to me, you listen to a remix and you're like, it's like they kind of de-80'd it, right? You know, they made the drums less boomy and less reverby and
They did, and they changed the vocal on the Turning Away. They
oh,
changed
did
it.
they?
It's different. It's a slightly different vocal track on that,
Wow.
which I don't. That's
It's
don't be
kind of like
touching David
kind of
Gilmour's
like
vocals.
rewriting history a little bit, you know, it's like,
Yeah, don't touch Gilmour's vocals ever for any reason. Don't do it.
mhm.
I don't mind the remix, especially because with the remix you get that surround sound mix of it, and it's really cool. But don't touch those vocals, man. I will. No.
Yeah. Well,
Don't you
well,
dare.
here's another thing that goes along with sort of the messy history that we talked about beginning. So, okay, here's the original that I bought, the original CD with the jewel case, right? You know, here's the original album
Oh yeah.
CD that I bought, and you open it up, right? And you're like looking at it, and it's like, okay, Pink Floyd. Oh wow, a picture of the band, and it's just these two, right?
Yeah.
On the original CD, it's just Gilmour and Mason. That's it, because they're the ones who put up all the money and started this album from scratch, right? Right joined much later into the process, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it was a confusing time when, part of it was intended to be a follow-up to About Face, and then Nick Mason comes on and the legal battles, and it's
Because
yeah.
yeah, because you had mentioned about a quarter of the way into the album, he wasn't sure if it was a solo record or if it was Pink Floyd. He didn't know. He's like, I don't know. He even said that. He goes, I don't know. This might be a solo record. Um, and then
Yeah.
you get you get the remaster or whatever year this is. I don't know, 2017, something like, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, and then you open it up and it's like, oh, there's all three of them. Okay. Like, whoa, all right. Suddenly it's all three of them. So it just makes me laugh because it's like very now they add Richard to the remaster or whatever. Um so anyway, but yeah, I do enjoy this record a lot. I'm just gonna say it. Like you said, I'm kind of a Gilmour guy. I love Gilmour. And I didn't like Final Cut that much either, to be honest with you. Some people love the Final Cut, and I think there's moments on Final Cut that are okay. But as an album overall, I don't listen to it that much. I never go back and go, man, I gotta listen to the Final Cut, you know?
See
But
Roger
this
Waters
album,
touring that album.
what's that?
You don't see Roger Waters touring that album.
No, exactly. Exactly. He tours the wall 8 million times, but he doesn't do Final Cut tour. That's a good
But
point.
the last time I saw Roger, he did throw in one or two tracks from the Final Cut, and it was really pleasing to see live.
Right.
They did it really good, but it's still not a favorite record.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of songs on there that are quite good. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
what is it like one of Heroes Return, um Southampton Dock is really good. Final Cut. I mean, there's a couple of really good songs on it. It's very Roger. It's extremely Roger. It's like very much like almost like a Roger solo record. This could be argued as more like a Gilmour solo record, as we've been talking about. But man,
yeah.
does he rip on this? He rips. There's a couple songs like you said, Sorrow. He rips on. Turning Away. He really rips a solo on that. I love. It's funny. People kind of rip on the second side of this, like I kind of like you were mentioning Yet Another Movie and Around and Terminal Frost. I kind of like the second side. It's almost like the first side was a little bit more like trying to get stuff on the radio, which he did with Learning to Fly. And actually, I do like One Slip a lot. I think One Slip is a great track, and that was co-written by Phil Manzanera of Roxy Music, by the way. Um, but
Yes.
there's no doubt that this is a cast of thousands. Like this is like a million people on this record, and Rick Wright gets like at the very end they put a couple things in with him because he joined really late in the process. And Nick at this point his drumming confidence level was low, so he wasn't playing a lot of, like you said, Carmine Appice plays on a lot of this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but regardless of the story and the background, I still listen to it and go, hey, I like it. Like I like this album. I like this album quite a bit. I put it on quite often, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I like it a lot, and it had been a while since I heard it, so I was glad I was able to brush up on it last night. I want to say with the remix, so Nick Mason went in and re-recorded some of his drum parts
Hmm.
and added more of his own drum parts to make this more like to have more of him on it, I suppose, to make it more
Right.
kind of like a Pink Floyd record. So he is on more of the remix than the original one, I believe.
Got it. I think you're right. They added more Nick and Rick. Yes.
Nick and Rick, yeah, there we
Right.
go. But I like the original mix too. I like that 80s sound that it has. Like you
I
said,
do
it's great.
too. I like the original mix, but again, I'm very sentimental. So because I bought it when it came out, so I'm sentimental about it. And when they messed with it, I was like, yeah. I mean, I could see where people would be into that, but anyway. Let's move on. Let's move on to Division Bell.
Sure, sure,
So
sure.
much to cover on this episode. It's crazy.
Okay. Yes, here we go.
All right, Division
Who,
Bell. I'm gonna hand it over to you, man. Like, and you said
me, okay.
you wanted to do a little bit of run up to it as well. So
Yeah. Well, there's a there's a reasonable gap between the two records, right? So this comes out in 1994, 30 years ago. Oh my gosh.
wow.
I wasn't even born yet.
Yeah, crazy, dude.
But I'm so looking between 1987 in 1994, there's a lot that changes in the world at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all evident here. Okay, there's the court case with Roger Waters is over and done. Gilmour finally speaks about it a little bit on some of the songs on here. There's a song on here about the Cold War and the Berlin Wall coming down. There's just so much to unpack on this record. And you know what, this is an album battle. I'm gonna have a hard time picking between the two. I got to tell you, because
Yeah.
both are solid. And this is the vinyl edition that came out about 5 years ago. It was a very limited run on blue vinyl.
Wow, so cool.
I've
Love
got the black vinyl one here. This is black vinyl, but you all know what a black record looks like. I just
Yeah.
just showing the colored one.
That's
Um,
that's a nice reissue, man. Look at that thing. That's nice.
yeah, I think this was 2019. Yeah, I remember, because we stocked it at the store, and when it sold out, it pretty much sold out and never to be, back in print again, to my recollection.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I love this record. I was super into this record when this reissue came out too, and even David Gilmour around the same time had done he went back to Pompeii and
Hmm.
did a concert there, and he streamed it in theaters across the world one night only. So naturally, me and a bunch of my friends at the time that I used to work with, all went to the movie theater that night, and saw that film, the Pompeii
Oh,
thing.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome, and he does a lot of songs from this live.
Right, right. Yeah.
Like still to this day, he always does High Hopes, and usually like Great Day for Freedom and stuff. But let's go through the tracks.
Sure.
So the very first track immediately threw me into yeah, it threw me into an emotional state where you can tell exactly what it was about, and there's not even any lyrics in it. It starts off with Cluster One, and immediately, by the feel of it, it reminds you of things in your past that you look back fondly on. And the music in that piece, for some reason, this is just what I was getting from it. And when I got to the last track, which is High Hopes, I'm like, okay, so I was right in my assumption about Cluster One and how I was feeling about that track, because it feels like they're interconnected, even though, like they bookend the album. So it's a beautiful call and response between Dave and Richard, in a gorgeously melancholic way. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but it's a sad yearning at the same time. It is like, well, I wrote here, it has an almost like a yearning feel to it as they look back on the past, weathered all the storms, and look beyond at what will come in this chapter of Floyd. And that's exactly what I was feeling listening to it. And it's like saying hello and goodbye at the same time, because it's putting a lock on the past, and then looking forward to the future, and then it gets you to think of your own experiences in life, when it's like, I'm looking back on when I was a kid, and hanging out with certain people I was friends with at the time, and that's all great for then, but now we're moving forward, and that's what this album is all about. Sort of, it's about moving forward and overcoming the whatever stressful or whatever scenarios in your life, and it's about moving forward from that. And that's the message that I get from this entire record.
Hmm.
What Do You Want From Me is, it's a heavier track that sort of counterbalances the mood of Cluster One. It's kind of a weird thing to adapt to, when you're, because Cluster One was so good, I had to go back and I had to hit the replay button just to see and let the feeling totally come over, and it's like, yeah, this is exactly what I was thinking.
Hmm.
But then it comes in with boom,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is like a channel change, right?
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
this beautiful melancholic track to this angry sort of approach. And it's really the only angry track on the record. I'd reckon that A Momentary Lapse of Reason is kind of an angry record. This is more or less a yeah, I was angry, but I'm moving on from it now record.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
and so this is obviously about, it's either about the demand from the fans or Roger Waters, but it's open-ended enough that you can know the history of Pink Floyd, but still relate it to other scenarios. And that's what's great about good art, is the fact that you can go, yeah, I think it could be about this, but I think it could be about this too. The
Mhm.
perspective remains open. And that's a
Yes.
big thing about Pink Floyd, is it's about perspective. And
Mhm.
before we get too philosophical with this, um,
Yes.
there's part of it that I think it's a double entendre. So it's definitely about the demand of the fans and saying, well, when are you going to make another Floyd record? And I want this and I want that. And then Roger Waters doesn't want him to continue on with the Floyd name, right? So all that stuff in the past now has been locked down and closed. But this is Gilmour's frustration coming out here
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
all of it, everything.
Mm.
And you feel it on this track, and the way he attacks the solos and things like that is just brilliant.
It's so much
Uh,
attitude in those solos in that song. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
totally, totally. Pulls apart. So actually, you have two Pink Floyd alumni on bass on this. You've got Guy Pratt and David Gilmour on bass. Beautiful acoustic guitars throughout, and lyrics I think are possibly about Roger Waters in this too, or someone who's just generally gone wrong in life, but while remaining hopeful about, the future. It's
Mhm.
kind of like someone else's perspective looking at someone else's life, right? And seeing that you're kind of pulls apart. That kind
Mhm.
of goes in with the name. Marooned. This is just an instrumental track, but it's a nice one nonetheless. It's sound effects reminiscent of echoes. You hear those little those weird noises. I can't. You just have to
I know
know.
what you mean. Yeah.
But they're so subtle in the mix in this that if you're not paying close enough attention, you might miss them. But just a gorgeous atmosphere laid down by the three dudes. Emotional guitar playing, and the way it's backed by what Richard Wright is doing. Richard Wright is very much happening on this record. His
Oh yeah.
presence is very known. And yeah, going on to the next on the next page. Uh, a Great Day for Freedom is definitely, as soon as I'd heard the song tons of times, okay, but it had been a while, and I come back and it's on the day the wall came down. I'm like, this is about the Cold War, isn't it? This is about the ending of the knocking down of the Berlin Wall. And I stopped it to look it up just to see if I was correct, and I was. And it's just a soulful track about the fall of the Berlin Wall, basically. It's a great day for freedom, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Uh,
when that refrain comes in on that song, the duh, 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 it's like, oh man, it's killer.
I
So
know.
good.
And the solo.
Yes, and the solo, yes, it's like, oh, so good.
Wearing the Inside Out is the next track, and you know what? It's an oddball track for sure. I like it. It's not my favorite. It's kind of like I don't know. It's da, 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 da. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Mostly
Yeah.
sung lead vocals by Richard Wright. And he's sung lead vocals. A lot of people don't realize that he's actually singing lead vocals in parts of the song Time from Dark Side of the Moon. I believe he sings some of the bridge sections. Just trying to remember. I'm on the spot. I can't remember the lyrics to it, if you can believe that.
Right, right.
But the bridge sections between the verses and solos in Time is also Richard Wright,
Yes, it is. Yep. Yep.
but he sings the majority of the lead vocal on this, and he's fine. He's a great singer. I love the saxophone from Dick Perry. Honestly, I have to say, as great as John Hallowell and Tom Scott are on Momentary Lapse of Reason, it's kind of nice to see Dick Perry back on the Division Bell, because he's like a mainstay from like the Dark Side period.
Hmm.
So when they had sax at that time on Wish You Were Here and stuff, that was Dick Perry, and he wasn't around for Momentary Lapse,
Right.
but they
Right.
brought him back on Division Bell.
Hmm.
And it was just nice to see, like, that's like an extra, like, yeah, this is Pink Floyd back, like full force.
Hmm.
um Honestly, I gotta say RIP Richard Wright, because he added such an atmosphere to that band that probably would not have been possible without him. um a lot of people look at like Roger or David as the geniuses, but there's a subtle genius, sitting in the back,
For
and
sure.
that's Richard Wright.
Yeah.
And if you take him out of the mix, what do you get?
Hmm.
No
Something's
Pink
missing.
Floyd.
Something's missing.
Pink
Yeah.
Floyd is done without him.
Yeah.
And so you can fight over the name all you want, but as long as you got Richard Wright there, you have a pretty good chance of being close to a Pink Floyd record.
Yeah.
Really unique changes throughout the song, though. A lot of chordal and melodic changes throughout it. It's a so-so track. It's a good track. It is absolutely not bad. There's nothing on this album that's bad. It's not bad. It's just not my favorite. But perhaps with more listens, like I've heard the song tons of times, but perhaps with just more listens, it'll, maybe you'll be more into it. It's
Yeah.
nice because it is a good track. Like there's alternating vocals between Richard and Dave. Dave,
Mhm.
not so much. It's mostly Richard, but he's still there to sort of counterbalance each other out. It's cool. Um, Take It Back. So I was listening to this. I'm like, well, this is a weird track to like, because Pink Floyd don't usually have love songs. And I was like, this is obviously some sort of love song about where the man is manipulating the woman. And I was totally wrong. It is about how I looked it up after because I was doing my research for this, man.
Nice, man. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm prepared.
You became
And so
prepared today.
I have a lot up my sleeveless shirt here.
That's right. Yeah.
It's actually about how it's actually an environmental track, and it's about how the woman that he's singing about in the song is actually Mother Earth, and how we, not necessarily you or me, but human and mankind totally abuse the hell out of her.
Mhm.
And that's what the lyrics are about. And it's about this assumption that, well, if you keep messing with her, she could take it all back on you. That's
Yeah.
that's what the lyrics are trying to convey here in this song, and it's well done, well done. Because, like I said, it's open ended to perspective, so you can hear this in different ways and relate it to different parts, and maybe your own or someone else's life, right? And
Right.
you look at what was written about, and you go, "Oh wow, I never would have guessed that." But
Mhm.
it's like a double entendre. McCartney was good at those. Not to reference him again, but
Yeah.
writing about something like Mother Earth, but making it sound like a love song.
Yes.
It's class writing. It
It's good
really
stuff.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm almost done. Coming back to life. This is one of my favorite tracks. I love this, and the live version on Pulse is absolutely killer.
Mhm.
Man, I just love that Pulse record. Show the shirt, man. You
Yeah.
gotta show the shirt, my dude.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
I man, I
Yes.
used to work at I used to work at Tim Hortons up the street here. And my gosh, I would go in and I'd put my phone on with the speaker and I would listen to that album and Animals on repeat for
Yeah.
days. I think I made them tired of me. They're probably glad I quit. But
The only thing missing is the blinking red light, right, on the box. Because then
yeah,
they
you
have
should
like
have
a
got the shirt.
didn't they have a blinking red light on the actual yeah.
The original one.
Yeah.
When it got repressed in the 2010s, they got rid of that
They got
because
rid
the
of it,
it's
yeah.
all died in them anyway, and you couldn't change them. So,
Yeah.
or you could change them, and just no one cared.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorite tracks. I love the slow atmosphere, gorgeous intro. The way it builds into the mid-tempo groove as the song progresses, really cool. It's a song about letting go of negative energy that once had you down, and as a result of that, you are coming back to life yourself. And that's what I feel a lot of this record is about. It's about coming to grips with everything that has happened to you in the past and just looking forward, looking up, and coming back to life on your own. And
Yeah.
that's what this record means to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Keep Talking, one of two Pink Floyd songs to have Stephen Hawking on it.
Mhm.
And I was listening to it, I was like, is that Stephen Hawking? And it totally is. It totally is. And it is so cool. And it's so fitting to have him on this track because it is kind of about, like, if you listen to the lyrics, it's kind of about debilitation and not having the ability to portray thoughts or feelings.
Mhm.
Why can't I speak now? What do you want from me? Like just Durga McBroom in the background. It's so good. It's so good. And
What
and
are
and
you thinking? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're a singer. You do that. That was really good.
Oh, thanks, man.
That was good. But I love the soundscapes in this. It is just amazing. I love the atmosphere in this track. It is just so wonderful. It's really adventurous to just sit and listen to this and surround sound and go, like you're just
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's like the Vinyl Time with Amy. She's featured on Scott's channel a couple times. Amy, she's super cool, and my hair is really messed up, so let's put that hat back on. But and she says She says, "This music makes me feel like I'm floating." And
Yes.
I get that 1000%. Amy, if you're watching this, you are so right. And I feel the same way. And these albums really do that for me. I feel like I'm floating.
Yep.
And especially listening to a track like Keep Talking, it really does that for me. But it's literally about someone who's going through some sort of debilitating issue where they can't speak or communicate properly. That's what I get from it anyway. And to have Stephen Hawking on there is a really touching tribute. It's really nicely done. Lost for Words. It's definitely a song. This is definitely a peaceful response to the problems between Waters and Gilmour at the time, and it's a look about how Gilmour felt about all of it. I was really digging into lyrics with this record. But the instrumentals on this are really nice too. Like, the nice double tracked acoustic guitar going all through it, and the way the guitars actually harmonize with themselves, at least at the beginning, is super nice.
Mhm.
And this is one of the few Pink Floyd songs with the F word in it. If you remember
Right.
that later.
Right.
I opened the door to my enemies and they tell me to F myself. That was about him re-inviting. He actually re-invited Roger Waters to join Pink Floyd again,
Hmm.
and Roger Waters told him to F off.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's what happened there. And so this is about him coming to grips with the insecurities of actually being able to continue on with the Pink Floyd name,
Hmm.
but going through with whatever confidence he had in doing it. And honestly, immense respect to Gilmour for what he weathered and came through at the end. It's just great. And a lot of that is him responding in that song. And High Hopes is kind of like, you can't really compare it to anything, but if I was to compare it to one track in particular, I'd probably compare it to Fading Lights from Genesis,
Hmm.
at the end of the We Can't Dance record, where
Right.
it's about looking back on the past fondly and closing that chapter and seeing what happens from there. And I think that because both songs are about the end of an era, both songs are about the end of a band. And for some reason, just to jump ship slightly here to talk about Genesis for a second, when Tony Banks wrote that song, he wrote the lyrics thinking that Phil Collins is probably gonna, this will probably be the last Genesis record. And by all means, it kind of was. If you're not counting all, um, uh, calling all stations,
Hmm.
Phil Collins would leave the band after that tour, and that's essentially what happened with Pink Floyd too. It's about looking back and just being happy about what happened, but closing the book forever and moving forward. And that's why I feel like High Hopes and the whole album really fits in with what it started off as with Cluster One, when that's what I was telling you, right? How I was feeling with that piece, and then moving forward to High Hopes is that I was right in the way that this is all like this is this is like a concept, but not like a lyrical like concept where each like it tells one story. It's kind of like the story of that chapter of Pink Floyd, but it can be relayed in different ways. It's a story about a chapter of life, and it's about moving on and growing and going forward and getting over the past and moving on. And that's what this whole album means to me. It's a very emotional record, and I'm gonna shut up now.
Yeah. And it's so evocative, High Hopes with those piano notes at the beginning with the bell. It's like, oh man, it's so evocative of those feelings and those emotions, you know?
Totally, and I hope I didn't go too long. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, no, you did great. You did amazing, man. You did really well. You did really well. It's really hard to talk about these records quickly because there's so much to, like you said, there's so much to unpack. Um,
Totally.
there's so much, and you did a great job, man. That was awesome. I mean, it's great.
Thank you, man. That's what happens when you sit me down with a record and a notebook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we're just, you people like you and I, we're just such big fans that we want to know more about if something affects us, we want to know more about it. We want to know what it's about. We want to dig in further. And I'm always been like that. And you're very similar to me in that regard.
I feel that. I feel
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I love that you dug in a little further on the lyrics and kind of from what I understand, a lot of lyrics were written by Polly Sampson. Uh,
Yeah.
which was with David's wife now. And she was
Yeah,
on her, you know. So
there's something to say. I'm so sorry to jump in,
oh, go
but
ahead.
there's something to say about the fact that they were kind of going through all that together. So a lot of those songs could be conveyed from Gilmour's perspective, even though they were largely written by her.
Right.
And
Right.
again, great writing to be
Yeah.
able to write from somebody else's point of view.
Yeah,
It's
I think she was trying to, do her best to channel David's thoughts, and like basically, she was living with him, so she probably knew what was going on with him um very well. So she was doing her best to from what I remember, it was like an interview or something where she said she was trying to channel his thoughts. Which I
yeah,
think she did very effectively. So um but um to quote Vinyl Time with Amy again, things like Marooned is like wow, 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 right?
yeah.
Um, I
But she's
love,
pretty cool.
yeah, Marooned is awesome. Oh my God, yeah, I watch Amy's channel a lot. She's good. She's fun to watch. Um, and so Amy, if you're watching, shout out. Um, but yeah, I mean, Division Bell, Cluster One. I like you said, just love the instrumentals on this album. Cluster One and Maroon are both amazing. Poles Apart, there's something about Poles Apart that hits me. I just think that is such a great song. That whole like acoustic guitar, that picking acoustic, and it's so if I used the word evocative earlier, it feels the same way with Poles Apart. And like you said, Richard Wright. The big deal about this album is Richard Wright is rightly put back in his full position as in this band. And you said it and I feel it too. It's very much felt on this album. He is back and he's putting in his 2 cents in this whole record, and it benefits greatly from that. um Great Day for Freedom, I mentioned earlier. I really, really love that track. I love Take It Back. Is, people say, oh, it sounds like U2 or Simple Minds or something. I mean, honestly, he's doing his Gilmour thing. It's a Gilmour. I mean, Edge may have taken it from Gilmour. That whole repetitive, echoey guitar picking thing. Um, and
Yeah,
then
they definitely got it from Dave.
yeah, absolutely. And then things like Keep Talking, I really like quite a bit. Um, and High Hopes, I mean, come on. It's like what a way to end the record. It's just really, really amazing. And he does, like you said, he does great live versions of that. I have a DVD called Remember the Night, and he does a version of High Hopes on there that's just like mind blowing. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
From his solo tour from, I think it was On an Island, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
it was.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just to, I mean, I listen to this again. I come back to this album a lot. I mean, this is supposed to be like second tier Floyd, but I come back to listen to this album and enjoy it a lot. I mean, the only criticism I would have, it's a quibble, is that maybe it's a bit long. I'm kind of with you that as much as I love Rick Wright, I love him to death, but I agree with you that Wearing the Inside Out kind of feels like a B-side. Like maybe that could have been put as an extra track or something. Like it just feels like there's a couple tracks. This album is 66 minutes long, so it's long. It's like this was at the time in the 94, it was like everyone was filling up the CDs, and it wasn't always for the benefit of the album, right?
Yeah. No, I know.
So you know what I mean? So this album feels like it's got a little bit of like maybe a couple songs, could it be like maybe two songs? This thing would be even stronger if like take like two songs off. I don't know what it would be, but maybe one of them would be, I don't know. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just going to say it could have maybe used a little bit of editing. That's my only criticism of it. But other than that, I really love it.
I feel you. They could have, and like we both kind of agree that Wearing the Inside Out is not by any means a bad track, but it probably that there's a certain flow that this album has, and that probably could have been saved as some sort of bonus material. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
But
could have been used for a bonus. That's my thought as well. And this is all retroactive, like, you know,
yeah.
it is what it is. It's still it's there. It's on the record. But it's just like I said, it's sometimes in these, especially in the 90s, I'd love to do an episode. I've talked to people about this. Like talk about albums that could use some editing. Like if they were take two or three songs off this and it would be a killer. because back in the day it was like 10 songs and you're out, right? Now it's like 13, 14 songs on every album, and it's like it doesn't need to have 14 songs on it. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
yeah, and with a case like this, I think there's only 10 tracks or maybe 11 tracks, but the songs are pretty long.
songs are long. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly. So
I
anyway,
feel you,
so
man.
what's that?
Oh, I was just saying, I feel you, bro. I feel you.
Yeah. 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 So that's my only it's a quibble. It's very, it's not a huge criticism. So but I gotta give it a little bit of criticism, just a little bit. So anyway, to comes to that point now where we have to kind of, even though music is not a battle, always have to bring this up. Like, I just do this battle thing just to talk about these albums, right? It has nothing to do with it doesn't really matter in the end, but it's just fun. It's just sort of a fun thing to do to say, okay, if you have these two albums from this artist, if you had to pick, which one would you go with? So it's that moment of truth now, Cody, where I got to come to you and say, hey, man, if you had to pick between these two latter day Floyd records, which one would it be?
Well, I is there an option C? I absolutely love both.
Yeah.
There's different emotional aspects to both of them that hit so differently when you listen to them. This one is a heavier, darker album, and this one is a more emotional, melancholic but hopeful record.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, with the fact that I really love both of these records.
Yeah.
This isn't as clear to me as Burn and Stormbringer was.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
and so I don't know.
Man, you're
Maybe
killing me, man. You're killing me. I can't
yeah.
pick.
Well, this one has that heavier, edgy sound, which I like a lot. But
Right.
this one has that atmospheric, emotional side to it that is really good.
They're both
Uh,
really good. They're both excellent
they're
records.
both really good. You know what? But this one doesn't have a filler track on it.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
There you
all
go.
right.
All right. Now I like it, man. I like it. Momentary lapse it is.
And again, that's not to say that this one is subpar because I
Right.
feel that they're neck and neck.
Yes. 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 This one's really
But
difficult. This one's tough.
this one's
It
for
edges it out.
today, I'm gonna choose this one.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna
Well,
plug the computer in. Hold on.
all right. Well, it's interesting because I have a tendency to, and I talk about this all the time. For like many, many episodes in a row, I was agreeing with my guest. It was like, and after a while, it's like Tom always agrees. He always agrees with the guest. The last few, I've actually had disagreements. So it's like, all right, great. So or differences. And this one, I'm gonna go. And again, it's like you said, it's so. I mean, it's so hard because they're both good. They're both very good records. I'm gonna say
Yeah,
this.
I'm gonna start sweating.
I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna edge. I'm gonna say Division Bell edges out Momentary Lapse by just a bit. Um, and it's still a very, very, very close race. I'm gonna go with Division Bell because I think the highs. I always talk about this, but the highs are really high. Uh, and I love that Rick Wright is back as a full member on this. Uh,
Yeah,
But you're right. It's a little, I agree with your assessment though, that generally it's a little lighter. It doesn't quite punch as hard as maybe some of the songs do on this.
I'm having second thoughts. I'm thinking
It's
by
allowed.
rights,
You can change your mind. It's allowed. It's up to you. Don't,
by, by rights, this is more of a Pink Floyd record.
right. But you got to go with your heart, right? Whatever your heart says, you got to go with your heart.
Well, my heart speaks on emotions, and
Right.
my heart will say emotionally for this. So you know what? Heck with it. I'm jumping on board with you, man.
All right.
I'm
All right.
I'm not typically a follower, but this is it's you're right. There's something about having Richard Wright back, and while I don't know.
But there's a
I
lot
don't
of
know.
great stuff on here too, though. There's a lot of great stuff on here. I mean, I love, like you said, Learning to Fly. I love. I think that's a great single. I think I like I said, I love Sorrow is like killer on this. Terminal Frost is amazing. So there's a lot of great stuff on this record. Don't get me wrong. A lot of great stuff.
Yeah, no, that's the same with both. And
Yeah.
you know, a new machine, okay.
Right.
We're in the Inside Out, okay.
Okay. Yeah. It's so
Yeah,
close. It's so close. It's so close.
yeah, maybe I'll go with this one too. Just in the fact that it's such a personal record and the topics that it deals with and the way that it struck me listening to it. Yeah,
Right.
you know what, heck with it. I'm on board with you, man. Both are amazing. If I could pick a tie, it would be, but
Yeah. Well, that's like
I'm jumping
it,
ship.
it's a great example though, Cody. It's a
Division
great
Bell.
example of how hard these are. These are some of these are so difficult. There's been a couple that have been really, really hard to pick. And this is one of them because they're really pretty similar in a lot of ways. And they're pretty as far as like quality, they're in the same level, you know, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know when we did the Deep Purple one, I knew going into that what I was picking, but I
Yeah.
still listened to both, and it's like, okay, I'm still picking Burn, but both are great. This one, I went and I was like,
So
I
hard.
have no idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess at the end of the day, I'll probably go Division Bell too, despite the fact that I love the heaviness and darkness of Momentary Lapse. There's a
Yeah.
real personal aspect to this record.
Right. Right. Yep. And you're right. This one does have heavier moments. There's no question. You're absolutely right on with that. This one there's something about it. It's got heavier stuff on it. But it gets a little bit hampered by the cast of thousands on the record. You know what I mean? Just a little bit, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, right? Um,
I actually like the Tony Levin stuff on it a lot.
yeah, I mean, Tony Levin kills it, kills on that album for sure. Kills it. No question. And Tony Levin is one of the best bass players on the planet. So I mean, there's nothing wrong at all with having Tony Levin on the album.
I'm
In
going
fact,
to meet him in October.
are you going to Beat?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I am too. I got
You know,
tickets too. Yep.
nice. Where are you going to see them?
I'm going to see him in Michigan. I think it's where is it? Royal Oak Theater, I think, in
That's
Michigan. So yeah,
going
I'm
to be
I'm so
awesome.
psyched to go see that. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's going to be killer, man. That's going
Yeah.
to be killer.
I love 80s King Crimson. Talk about 80s again. I love 80s Crimson. It's like my favorite. Discipline, Three of a Perfect Pair, and what's the other one?
And beat,
Beat.
beat.
Bring it on, man. I'll play all those records. I'll be so psyched.
Then why don't we do? We should consider for the future maybe doing three of those albums as a head-to-head and
Yeah,
ranking all
all
three of
three.
them.
I had that idea. That's funny that you brought that up, is I actually had that idea of because if you're gonna do two of them, why don't do all three? Like just talk about all three of them. I'll just do an 80s Crimson episode, you know?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
be down if ever you wanted me to come back again. I'd be down to do that with you.
Awesome. All right. We already got the next episode, folks. So if you've stayed with us this long, you are a big fan of Pink Floyd, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much to Cody. Thank you. Really appreciate you coming on the channel, man.
I appreciate you having me and for being such an awesomely cool dude. You're super nice every time I get to chat with you, and I really appreciate you.
Oh man, thank you so much. That's so cool. So anyway, we are appreciative of anyone that just hits that like button or subscribes. Yeah, I got to bring that up. And
Yeah.
but thanks again for hanging with us. Great episode. Go listen to some Pink Floyd, and we'll see you next time on Curless Mania. See ya.